My name is Elliot, and I am 32 years old. I never thought I would be the one to bring down my mother's house of cards, but sometimes the truth demands to be heard. For years, I watched her craft an elaborate facade around our family with my sister Sarah as the golden child and me as the designated failure. When I discovered she had faked Sarah's entire college graduation, I had a choice: confront her immediately or play along until the perfect moment. I chose the latter, and what happened at that celebration changed our family forever. Before I dive into how I uncovered this web of deception, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to see how this twisted family drama unfolds. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in Boston, appearances were everything to my mother, Patricia. Our modest colonial-style house was always immaculately kept, not for our comfort, but for the impression it made on visitors. From an early age, I understood that what others thought of us mattered more than what was actually true. Patricia worked as a real estate agent, though she always introduced herself as a property investment consultant to make her job sound more prestigious. She joined every neighborhood committee and parent association not because she cared about the causes, but because they gave her social standing. Her obsession with status shaped every aspect of our family life. My father, James, was a stark contrast to my mother. Quiet and conflict-averse, he worked as an accountant at a local firm. Where Patricia demanded attention, James avoided it. He retreated into his work and hobbies, letting Patricia make most of the family decisions. Looking back, I can see how his passivity enabled her controlling behavior. Whenever tensions rose, he would simply leave the room or mutter, "Listen to your mother." His unwillingness to stand up to Patricia left Sarah and me to navigate her manipulation alone. From the moment Sarah was born 3 years after me, the difference in how Patricia treated us was obvious. Sarah had the misfortune of looking almost exactly like Patricia, with the same dark hair and delicate features. Patricia saw Sarah as an extension of herself, a second chance to achieve the recognition she felt she deserved. Whenever Sarah did anything remotely impressive, like winning a participation ribbon in the school science fair, Patricia would call everyone we knew to brag. Our refrigerator was covered with Sarah's artwork and certificates, while my achievements were mentioned as afterthoughts, if at all. I still remember bringing home a perfect score on my 5th grade math test, only to have Patricia glance at it and say, "That is nice. But did you clean your room like I asked?" That same week, Sarah brought home a B- on her spelling test, and Patricia took her out for ice cream to celebrate her hard work. The pattern was established early: Sarah could do no wrong and I could do no right. During my junior year of high school, I was selected for an advanced computer science program that only accepted 10 students from the entire state. When I told my parents, my father offered a distracted congratulations without looking up from his newspaper. Patricia just frowned and said, "That will look good on college applications, but do not get so caught up in computers that your grades slip." 2 months later, when Sarah got a call back for the school play, Patricia threw a party and invited the extended family to celebrate her theatrical talent. The irony was that Sarah often struggled academically. She had undiagnosed dyslexia until high school, which made reading and writing difficult for her. But Patricia would never acknowledge any weakness in her golden child. When Sarah brought home poor grades, Patricia would blame the teachers for not understanding Sarah's creative learning style. She once spent 3 hours on the phone harassing Sarah's English teacher for giving her a C on an essay until the exhausted teacher agreed to let Sarah rewrite it. Meanwhile, I discovered early on that I had a talent for programming. By 16, I was building websites for local businesses and saving the money for college. Patricia dismissed my skills as playing on the computer and frequently interrupted my work to have me do chores that Sarah was exempted from because she was studying or practicing for various activities Patricia had signed her up for. The summer before college, I won a $5,000 scholarship from a technology foundation. Patricia's response was to ask if that would cover textbooks before changing the subject to Sarah's upcoming debate team tryouts. I remember sitting at the dinner table watching my accomplishment being brushed aside, and something inside me hardened. I decided then that I would build my own life away from Patricia's warped value system. I chose a university 300 miles away and limited my visits home to major holidays. During those visits, I would sit through hours of updates about Sarah's supposedly remarkable college experience at Northeastern University, where she was allegedly studying psychology. Patricia would detail Sarah's classes, her professor's praise, and her position on the dean's list, all while shooting me. Pointed looks as if to say, "See what a real achiever looks like." What Patricia never mentioned during these family gatherings was that I had graduated with honors, secured a position at a leading tech company, and was rapidly advancing in my career. By 28, I was leading a development team and earning more than my father ever had, but in Patricia's narrative, I was still the underachieving son who played with computers while Sarah was changing the world with her brilliant mind. As the years passed, I built a life I was proud of in Chicago. I made real friends who valued me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. I dated people who did not require me to diminish myself to make them comfortable. I created boundaries with my family, limiting my exposure to Patricia's toxic comparisons. But the wound of being the family scapegoat never fully healed. Part of me still craved the parental recognition that had been so liberally given to Sarah while being withheld from me. And so our family continued in its dysfunctional pattern, with Patricia orchestrating our roles. James passively enabling her, Sarah accepting her position as the golden child, and me maintaining a safe distance while building a life outside of Patricia's control, until the phone call that would ultimately expose everything. It was a Tuesday evening in April when my phone lit up with Patricia's name. I considered letting it go to voicemail as I usually did, but something told me to answer. Her voice came through with that artificial warmth she reserved for public performances and manipulations. "Elliot, I am so glad I caught you. I have been trying to reach you for days." This was a lie. There were no missed calls from her on my phone. "Hi, Mom. What is up?" I kept my tone neutral, already bracing myself for whatever agenda she was about to reveal. "We are having a very special celebration for Sarah in 3 weeks. She is graduating with her psychology degree, and we are throwing her a party. The whole family will be there, plus some of our closest friends. About 50 people. You need to come." She did not phrase it as a question or invitation, but as a command. The excessive pride in Patricia's voice was familiar, but something felt off. Sarah had been in college for 6 years at this point, switching majors multiple times, according to Patricia's updates. Last I had heard, she was on academic probation, though Patricia had framed it as Sarah taking time to focus on mental health research outside of regular classes. "That is great news," I said carefully. I did not realize she was that close to finishing her degree. Patricia's voice took on a defensive edge. "Well, if you called more often, you would know these things. She has been working incredibly hard, unlike some people who took the easy route with computers. The easy route that had required thousands of hours of learning practice and professional development." I bit back a retort. "Sarah has overcome so many challenges," Patricia continued. "Her professors say she has one of the most insightful minds they have ever taught. We are all so proud of her accomplishment." The way she emphasized accomplishment made it clear she was contrasting it with my supposedly lesser achievements. After all these years, the dig still stung, but I had learned not to show it. "The party is on Saturday, the 24th, she continued. "I expect you to be here. Family supports family, Elliot." The implication being that I was failing at even this basic obligation. My initial instinct was to make an excuse. A work emergency, a previously scheduled trip, anything to avoid another event centered around glorifying Sarah while diminishing me. But curiosity was stirring. Something about the sudden graduation announcement did not add up. "I will check my calendar and let you know," I said, knowing this non-committal response would irritate her. "This is not optional, Elliot. Your sister has achieved something remarkable, and you need to be here to support her, unless your computer games are more important than family." Her voice had that familiar caustic edge that had cut me since childhood. After a few more minutes of thinly veiled guilt-tripping, I agreed to attend, if only to end the conversation. But after hanging up, I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Sarah had been allegedly studying psychology for 6 years with no previous mention of an imminent graduation. Patricia had always been quick to announce Sarah's accomplishments in real time, often exaggerating them for effect. Why had there been no build-up to this supposedly momentous achievement? The next day during my lunch break, I did something I should have done years ago. I called Northeastern University's registrar office. "I am trying to confirm if my sister Sarah Thompson is graduating this spring with a psychology degree," I said to the helpful administrator who answered. After verifying some details, the administrator checked their records. "I am sorry, but we do not have any student by that name currently enrolled." My heart skipped. "Could you check if she was previously enrolled?" "She would have started about 6 years ago." A few keystrokes later, the administrator said, "Yes, Sarah Thompson was enrolled from fall of 2019 to spring of 2021, but she withdrew from the university at that time. She has not been registered for any classes in the past 2 years." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Sarah had dropped out of college 2 years ago, yet Patricia had continued to update us on Sarah's non-existent academic career, complete with fictional courses, professors, and achievements. The elaborate lies suddenly made sense of subtle inconsistencies I had noticed, but dismissed Sarah's vague answers when asked about her studies, her reluctance to discuss specific courses, Patricia quickly changing the subject when relatives asked too many detailed questions. After thanking the administrator, I sat at my desk in a daze, trying to process what this meant. Was Sarah complicit in this deception? Or was she another victim of Patricia's obsession with appearances? And what about my father? Did he know the truth? That evening, I called my friend Marcus, the one person who had heard all my family stories over the years, and understood the dynamic without judgment. "Man, that is some next-level manipulation," Marcus said after I explained what I had discovered. "What are you going to do, call her out?" "I am not sure yet," I admitted. "Part of me wants to text her right now and confront her with what I know. But another part wants to understand why. Why would she maintain such an elaborate lie? And is Sarah being forced to go along with it? Or is she a willing participant?" Marcus considered this. "If you confront your mom now, she will just spin another lie to cover it. You know how she operates. But if you wait until the party, when she has an audience," I finished his thought, "when she cannot control the narrative as easily." "Exactly. But first you need more information. You need to know if your sister and dad are victims or accomplices." Marcus was right. Confronting Patricia prematurely would only give her time to construct more lies. I needed to understand the full picture before deciding how to proceed. For the first time in my life, I saw an opportunity to break the pattern that had defined our family for decades. Not out of revenge, but because the truth, however painful, was necessary for any real healing to begin. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering information. I searched social media for clues about Sarah's actual life, found LinkedIn profiles of Northeastern psychology professors Patricia had mentioned by name, and discreetly reached out to a cousin who lived near my parents. I discovered that Sarah was working as a barista at a coffee shop in Boston, not completing a prestigious psychology internship as Patricia had claimed. The professors Patricia had named were real, but there was no evidence Sarah had ever taken their classes. And according to my cousin Sarah, rarely visited our parents' home anymore, despite Patricia's stories about Sarah coming over for dinner several times a week to discuss her thesis research. As the day of the party approached, I felt a mix of dread and determination. I packed my bag, booked a hotel rather than staying at my parents' house, and flew to Boston with a clarity of purpose I had never felt regarding my family. This time, I would not play the role Patricia had assigned me. This time, the truth would have its day. The drive from my hotel to my childhood home felt surreal. Familiar landmarks passed by the window as a knot formed in my stomach. I had rehearsed what I might say and do dozens of times, yet I still felt unprepared for what lay ahead. As I turned onto our street, I could see cars lining both sides. Patricia had always loved a spectacle, and Sarah's fake graduation party would clearly be no exception. The modest colonial I had grown up in was transformed for the occasion. Balloons in Northeastern's red and black colors adorned the mailbox and front door. A professionally printed banner declaring "Congratulations, graduate" hung across the front of the house. Patricia had spared no expense to maintain her illusion. I parked a block away and sat in my car for a few minutes, gathering my courage. This would be the first time I had seen most of my extended family in over a year, and I knew Patricia would have been carefully managing what they knew about me. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the gift. I had brought a thoughtfully chosen book on authentic living that felt appropriate given the circumstances, and walked toward the house. The backyard had been converted into a reception area that would have been impressive for an actual accomplishment. White folding chairs were arranged in neat rows facing a small podium. End of 60 wine. Tables covered in linen cloths held elaborate food displays and a professionally made cake decorated with Northeastern's logo. Photographs of Sarah in various stages of her life, many with deceptive captions about her college experience, were displayed on easels. I noticed one that read Sarah presenting her research at the psychology symposium that was clearly just Sarah at a coffee shop. My Aunt Helen spotted me first. "Elliot, we did not think you would make it," she exclaimed, embracing me. "Your mother said you were probably too busy with your computer hobby to attend." Computer hobby. 6 years as a senior developer reduced to a hobby. Classic Patricia framing. "I would not miss my sister's graduation celebration," I replied with a smile that did not reach my eyes. More relatives approached each interaction following a similar pattern. They were surprised to see me had been told I was unlikely to attend, and knew remarkably little about my actual life while being full of admiration for Sarah's fictional achievements. I maintained a pleasant demeanor, while taking mental notes of just how extensively Patricia had managed the family's perception of both her children. My father spotted me from across the yard and approached with the hesitant manner of a man who knows he has failed in his duties. "Elliot, good to see you, son." He embraced me awkwardly. Up close I could see new worry lines etched into his face. His eyes darted nervously toward the house, and I wondered if he was checking if Patricia had noticed my arrival. "Dad, how are you?" I studied his face, looking for signs that he was complicit in the deception. "Oh, you know, busy with work. Proud day for the family." His voice lacked conviction, and he could not quite meet my eyes. In that moment I knew he was aware of the lie, but too cowardly to challenge it. "Yes, quite an achievement," I said, watching him flinch slightly at my pointed tone. "Where is the graduate of honor?" "Inside with your mother. Last-minute preparations." He seemed eager to end our conversation, another sign of his discomfort with the situation. As if summoned by our discussion, Patricia emerged from the house resplendent in an expensive new dress, her hair and makeup professionally done. She spotted me and her smile tightened almost imperceptibly before she made her way over, greeting guests as she came. "Elliot, you made it." She air-kissed near my cheek, maintaining appearances in front of the assembled guests. "You could have dressed more formally for your sister's special day." I was wearing a perfectly appropriate button-down shirt and slacks, but Patricia had always found ways to criticize my appearance. "Congratulations on Sarah's achievement, Mom. It must be such a proud moment after all these years." I emphasized all these years slightly, watching her face for a reaction. "Yes, well, Sarah has always been exceptionally dedicated to her education. Not everyone has the discipline for academic excellence." The familiar comparison was right on cue. "Speaking of Sarah, I need to check on her. Mingle with your family. Try not to mention your computer games too much. No one wants to hear about that today." With that, she swept away, leaving the familiar sting of dismissal. For the next hour, I circulated among the guests, listening more than talking. I heard elaborate stories about Sarah's research projects, her brilliant thesis, her job offers from prestigious institutions, all clearly originating from Patricia. The fiction she had created was impressively detailed down to specific professors and courses that had never existed for Sarah. I finally spotted my sister near the drink table, looking uncomfortable in a new dress that Patricia had undoubtedly selected. Sarah had always preferred casual clothes, another point of contention with our mother. She seemed to be avoiding extended conversations, smiling politely but quickly moving away when guests approached. When she saw me, surprise and what looked like shame crossed her face. Before I could reach her, Patricia clinked a glass for attention and asked everyone to take their seats. The formal program was beginning. I found a seat in the back row, watching as Patricia took the podium with the confident air of a woman who believed her own lies. "Welcome, family and friends, to this celebration of academic excellence and perseverance." Patricia beamed at the assembled guests. As many of you know, Sarah's journey through higher education has been marked by exceptional achievement and recognition from her professors. I watched the guests nodding appreciatively while Sarah stared at her hands, clearly uncomfortable with the fabrications. Patricia continued for nearly 15 minutes, detailing Sarah's fictional academic accomplishments with the precision of someone who had rehearsed her lies extensively. She mentioned research that never happened, awards that were never received, and career prospects that did not exist. While some young people take the easy path, Patricia said with a meaningful glance in my direction, Sarah chose to challenge herself to pursue knowledge that will benefit humanity. Her psychology degree represents not just academic achievement, but a commitment to understanding and helping others. The contrast was clear to everyone present. Sarah was the dedicated scholar while I was the underachiever who had chosen the easy path. I maintained a neutral expression knowing that my moment would come. This performance was just confirming what I already knew. Patricia's need to elevate Sarah and diminish me had led her to create an elaborate fiction that was now being presented to 50 people who believed every word. As Patricia concluded her speech to enthusiastic applause, I caught Sarah's eye across the rows of chairs. Her expression was a complex mixture of embarrassment, resignation, and something else I could not quite identify. In that moment, I felt a surge of protectiveness toward my sister. Whatever role she had played in this deception, I suspected she was more victim than perpetrator. The speeches continued. My father gave a brief, uncomfortable toast that carefully avoided specific details about Sarah's education. A family friend who was a professor at a different university spoke about the value of higher education in general terms. Through it all, I observed, planned, and waited for the right moment to unravel the elaborate tapestry of lies Patricia had woven around our family for years. When the formal program ended and guests dispersed to enjoy the catered lunch, I made my way to Sarah. She was standing alone near the rose bushes, as if seeking a moment of solitude amid the celebration of her fictional achievement. Up close, I could see dark circles under her eyes, poorly concealed with makeup likely applied by Patricia. Congratulations, graduate, I said quietly, watching her flinch at the word. Elliot, I did not think you would come. She looked around nervously, checking if Patricia was watching us. And miss my little sister's big day, how could I? I kept my tone light, but my expression made it clear I knew something was wrong. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Can we talk somewhere else, please? I nodded, and we walked casually toward the side yard, out of sight from most of the guests. Once we were alone, Sarah's carefully maintained facade crumbled. I am so sorry, Elliot. This whole thing is insane. I tried to tell her no, but you know how she is. Once she decides on a narrative, there is no changing her mind. The words tumbled out in a desperate rush. So you did drop out of Northeastern 2 years ago, I said gently. Not as an accusation, but as confirmation. Sarah's eyes widened. How did you know? I called the university. Why did you leave? She leaned against the fence, suddenly looking exhausted. Anxiety and depression mostly. I was having panic attacks before every exam. The pressure from Mom was unbearable. Every time I called home, she would ask about my grades, my professor's feedback, if I was still on track for honors. When I got a C on a midterm, she made me recite affirmations in the mirror for 2 hours. Sarah ran a hand through her carefully styled hair, messing it up in a small act of rebellion. I just could not do it anymore. I had a complete breakdown during finals week and went to the campus counseling center. They helped me file for a medical withdrawal. And Mom did not accept it, I guessed. She came to Boston when I called to tell her. I thought she would be worried about me, you know. Instead, she was furious about what people would think. She told me I could take a short break, but no one needed to know. She started telling everyone I was doing an intensive research program that required fewer classes. Sarah looked down. At first, I thought it was temporary, that I would go back after getting some help. But the more time passed, the bigger her lies became. She was telling everyone about classes I never took, professors I never met. What have you been doing for the past 2 years, I asked. Working at a coffee shop downtown. I actually enjoy it. I make lattes, talk to customers, come home without the weight of expectations crushing me. I have been taking a few photography classes at the community center, too. For the first time, a genuine smile crossed her face. I am good at it, Elliot. Really good. My instructor says I have a natural eye for composition. That is great, Sarah. Really. And I meant it. For the first time, I was hearing about something she had chosen for herself, not something Patricia had selected to enhance the family image. Mom does not know about the photography. She thinks I am still in therapy trying to get strong enough to return to Northeastern. When she told me about this graduation party, I tried to refuse. We had a huge fight. She said I owed her this after all she had sacrificed for my education. Sarah's voice broke. She said if I did not go along with it, she would tell everyone I had a mental breakdown and had to be institutionalized. Can you believe that? Her own daughter. The manipulation was breathtaking but not surprising. Is Dad aware of all this? Sarah nodded miserably. He knows I dropped out. He even helped me find my apartment in Boston. But he is too afraid of Mom to stand up to her. He sends me money sometimes, tells me he is proud of me for finding my own path. But he never contradicts her version of reality in public. This is even worse than I thought, I admitted. And it is not just about your college experience. Sarah looked at me curiously. What do you mean? While I was researching your graduation, I discovered other lies. Mom has been fired from her real estate job. She told everyone she left to start her own luxury property consultation business, but I found a complaint filed against her for misrepresenting property values. Sarah gasped. Are you serious? She is still leaving the house every day dressed for work. She goes to the library and makes calls from there to maintain the illusion. And Dad's promotion last year, it was actually a demotion after his department was restructured. They are in serious financial trouble, Sarah. This party, it was paid for with a loan from Uncle Robert, who thinks he is investing in Dad's non-existent business expansion. Sarah sank down onto a garden bench, overwhelmed by these revelations. How do you know all this? I have been doing some digging since Mom called about your graduation. I found financial documents when I arrived early and checked Dad's home office. They are 3 months behind on the mortgage. The perfect family image Mom has created is a complete fabrication from your academic success to their financial stability. What are we going to do? Sarah asked, looking younger and more vulnerable than she had in years. The truth needs to come out, Sarah. Not just about your education, but all of it. Mom's lies have hurt everyone. You have been living in shame for dropping out when you should have been supported in finding your own path. Dad is drowning in debt trying to maintain Mom's lifestyle. Relatives have loaned money they will never get back. It has to stop. She will never admit it, Sarah said, shaking her head. You know, Mom. She will deny everything, turn it around, make us look like the villains. Not if we have evidence and do it publicly, I said, the plan forming more clearly in my mind. At dinner tonight, when everyone is together, we need to expose everything. I have the university records showing your withdrawal. I have copies of the financial documents. Mom has controlled the narrative for too long. It is time for the truth. Sarah looked terrified, but also relieved, as if a weight she had been carrying for years might finally be set down. What about Dad? I will talk to him first. He needs to know what is coming. I squeezed her hand. You are not alone in this anymore, Sarah. We should have been allies all along instead of letting Mom pit us against each other. As we returned to the party, I saw Patricia watching us with suspicious eyes. She had always feared Sarah and I forming a united front against her manipulations, which was why she had worked so hard to drive a wedge between us. But that division was ending today. Together we would bring the truth to light, no matter how painful the process might be. After my conversation with Sarah, I needed to speak with my father. I found him in the garage, ostensibly looking for extra chairs but clearly hiding from the festivities. When he saw me, he busied himself rearranging garden tools. Dad, we need to talk. I closed the garage door behind me for privacy. About what he did not look at me, focusing intently on organizing wrenches by size. About the fact that Sarah dropped out of college 2 years ago, and Mom is throwing a graduation party for a degree that does not exist. My direct approach made him freeze. Elliot, you do not understand the situation. Your mother has been under a lot of stress. His default response, making excuses for Patricia. I understand perfectly. Mom has created a fictional reality for this family, and you have enabled it. Sarah is miserable, living a lie. Because Mom threatened to tell everyone she had a mental breakdown if she did not play along. How could you let this happen? My father finally turned to face me, his expression, a mixture of shame and defeat. What was I supposed to do, your mother? When things do not go according to her plan, she cannot handle it. When Sarah called about withdrawing, Patricia collapsed. I have never seen her like that. She kept saying what a failure she was as a mother, how everyone would judge her. She talked about ending her life, Elliot. His voice cracked. I was scared for her. The doctor prescribed medication, but she refused to take it. Said there was nothing wrong with her, that fixing Sarah's situation would not cure. I had not expected this. Patricia's controlling behavior stemmed from deeper issues than I had realized, so you went along with her lie. At first, I thought it was temporary, just to get through that rough period. But then she started elaborating on the story, adding details, telling more people. It spiraled out of control. I tried to talk to her about being honest, but she would become hysterical. It was easier to go along with it. He rubbed his face wearily. I have been sending Sarah money, helping her build her own life quietly. I thought that was the best compromise. A compromise that left Sarah living in shame and fear, I pointed out. And what about the financial problems? The loan from Uncle Robert. The mortgage payments you have missed. His head snapped up. How do you know about that? I checked your office earlier. The past due notices were in your desk drawer. My father sank onto a workbench, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. Everything fell apart last year. The company downsized, and I was moved to a lower-paying position. I tried to tell Patricia we needed to cut back, sell the house, live more modestly. She refused to even discuss it. Said it would ruin our standing in the community. So I started borrowing money, using credit cards, anything to maintain the lifestyle she insisted upon. And the loan from Uncle Robert. Your mother told him I was expanding my financial consulting business, that I needed capital for office space and employees. There is no business, Elliot. Just more debt. He looked utterly defeated. This has to stop, Dad. Today, the lies are destroying this family. What are you planning to do? Fear crept into his voice. During dinner, Sarah and I are going to tell everyone the truth. About her education, about the financial situation, all of it. I watched his face pale. Your mother will never forgive you, or me if I support this. This is not about forgiveness, Dad. It is about honesty, about living in reality, instead of Patricia's carefully constructed fiction. Sarah deserves to be proud of who she actually is, not ashamed of who Mom wanted her to be. You deserve freedom from crushing debt and constant deception. He was silent for a long moment. She will see this as a betrayal. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their destructive behavior. I said gently. Mom needs help, not more lies. My father took a deep breath. What do you need me to do? We spent the next 30 minutes outlining the plan. I would ask to make a toast during dinner, which would serve as the starting point for revealing the truth. Sarah would confirm my statements about her education and current life. My father agreed to verify the financial deceptions, though he was clearly terrified of Patricia's reaction. Before returning to the party, I discreetly approached key family members who had been most affected by Patricia's lies, particularly those who had loaned money based on false pretenses. I did not reveal everything, but I prepared them by suggesting they pay close attention during dinner, as important family matters would be discussed. I wanted witnesses who were primed to hear the truth, people Patricia could not easily dismiss or manipulate. When the catering staff began setting up for dinner, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For years I had accepted my role as the family disappointment, the less worthy child who had chosen the easy path while Sarah supposedly excelled academically. Today that narrative would be corrected, not out of vengeance, but because the truth was necessary for healing. I watched Patricia directing the staff with her usual controlling precision, adjusting table settings and flower arrangements that were already perfect. She had placed the fake diploma prominently on a display table, along with photographs of Sarah at various campus locations, carefully staged during visits to create the illusion of student life. The elaborate deception was both impressive and disturbing in its attention to detail. Sarah caught my eye from across the yard and gave a subtle nod. She had changed into a different dress, one Patricia would not have approved of a small act of reclaiming her identity. My father stood near the house looking like a man heading to his own execution, but he too nodded when our eyes met. We were ready. As guests began taking their seats at the elegantly decorated tables, I felt a momentary pang of doubt. Was I doing the right thing, exposing these painful truths in such a public setting? But then I remembered the years of lies, the damage done to Sarah's self-worth, the financial deception that had entrapped my father and my own, marginalizing as the family failure. The truth, however uncomfortable, was long overdue. Patricia took her place at the head table, arranging Sarah beside her like a prized trophy. She beckoned my father to join them while pointedly not looking in my direction. I was seated at a secondary table with distant relatives, another of Patricia's tactics to emphasize my lesser status in the family hierarchy. It would make no difference. In a few minutes, status and hierarchy would be the least of Patricia's concerns. The catering staff served the first course, a butternut squash soup that Patricia had selected because it was served at a faculty dinner Sarah had supposedly attended. The irony was not lost on me. I watched my mother hold court, accepting congratulations for her daughter's fictional achievement, basking in the admiration of guests who had no idea they were participants in an elaborate charade. As the main course was being served, Patricia clinked her glass for attention. Before we continue our celebration, I want to thank everyone for coming to honor Sarah's remarkable achievement. As the parent of a Northeastern University graduate with honors, I can tell you that the pride I feel is immeasurable. It was time. Before she could continue, I stood up and raised my glass. If I may, I would like to offer a toast to my sister. Patricia's smile tightened, but with 50 guests watching, she could hardly refuse. Of course, Elliot. How unexpected. I moved to the center of the room where everyone could see me. Family and friends, thank you for being here today. This is indeed a day of truth and revelation. The dinner setting was more elaborate than I had expected, even knowing Patricia's obsession with appearances. The tables formed a U-shape in the backyard, draped in Northeastern's red and black colors. Floral centerpieces featuring roses and lilies dominated each table, with votive candles creating a warm glow as evening approached. At the head table, Patricia had placed a large framed photograph of Sarah in a cap and gown, photoshopped by a professional to appear authentic. Next to it sat the fake diploma printed on heavy parchment paper and displayed in an ornate frame. As I stood before our assembled guests, champagne glass in hand, I could feel Patricia's eyes boring into me. Her tight smile communicated a clear warning to stick to the script, to maintain the fiction she had so carefully constructed. For once, I would not comply. As many of you know, Sarah and I have had very different paths in life. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. While I chose a career in technology, Sarah pursued academic excellence in psychology. At least that is what we have all been told. A murmur of confusion rippled through the guests. Patricia's smile froze, her knuckles whitening around her glass. The truth is, Sarah is indeed remarkable, but not for the reasons we are celebrating today. I turned to look directly at my sister, whose eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and relief. Sarah, would you like to tell everyone what you have actually been doing for the past 2 years? Patricia stood abruptly. Elliot, this is hardly the time for your jealous outbursts. If you cannot celebrate your sister properly, perhaps you should leave. I am celebrating my sister, Mom. The real Sarah, not the fictional version you have created. I held up my phone. I have here confirmation from Northeastern University that Sarah withdrew from the program 2 years ago. There is no psychology degree. There is no graduation. The shocked gasps from the guests were audible. Sarah slowly stood, her voice trembling, but determined. It is true. I left Northeastern after suffering from severe anxiety and depression, largely brought on by the pressure to meet impossible expectations. She looked directly at Patricia. Mom threatened to tell everyone I had been institutionalized if I did not go along with her lie about my continued education. Patricia's face contorted with rage and panic. Sarah is confused. She has been under tremendous stress completing her studies. Elliot has always been jealous of her success and is trying to undermine her special day. There is no success to be jealous of, Mom, I said calmly. Sarah has been working as a barista for the past 2 years while taking photography classes, something she genuinely enjoys and excels at. But that did not fit your narrative of what success should look like. Uncle Robert stood up, his expression troubled. Patricia, is this true? Because I gave James $50,000 for his business expansion based on your recommendation. Which brings us to the next deception. I continued removing documents from my jacket pocket. Dad does not have a business expansion. He was demoted last year, not promoted as everyone was told. The money was used to pay overdue mortgage payments and credit card debt incurred to maintain the lifestyle Mom insisted upon despite their financial reality. The guests were now openly staring at Patricia, whose perfectly composed facade was crumbling visibly. She turned to my father. James, tell them, this is nonsense. Tell them. My father, to his credit, stood up slowly. His voice was quiet but clear. It is all true. We are 3 months behind on the mortgage. There is no business expansion. I have been too afraid to admit our financial troubles because I was afraid of facing reality. Patricia lunged for the documents in my hand, but I stepped back. These are bank statements showing the mortgage delinquency, credit card statements with minimum payments only for the past year, and a copy of Dad's demotion letter with the accompanying salary reduction. How dare you go through our private papers, Patricia hissed, abandoning her denial for outrage. I found these in the top drawer of Dad's desk. They were hardly hidden because everyone in this house has been living in fear of acknowledging the truth. I turned to address the stunned guests. The perfect family you have all been admiring does not exist. It never did. It was a carefully crafted illusion maintained through lies, manipulation, and threats. Sarah stepped around the table to stand beside me. For years, Mom has portrayed me as the golden child, and Elliot as the disappointment. The reality is that Elliot graduated with honors and has built a successful career in technology, leading a development team at one of the top firms in Chicago. Meanwhile, I am still figuring out my path, which is perfectly okay. But none of that fit Mom's narrative of who we should be. Patricia made one last desperate attempt to regain control. This is ridiculous. I have always supported both my children equally. These accusations are hurtful and false. She turned to the guests with a practiced victim expression. I do not know why my children would humiliate me like this on what should be a joyous occasion. Because the occasion itself is a lie, I replied firmly. And the pattern of deception needs to end for this family to heal. Aunt Helen, remember when Mom told you Sarah was doing research with Professor Martinez at Northeastern? Professor Martinez retired 5 years ago. Uncle Robert. The investment opportunity in Dad's business. There is no business. Cousin Jennifer, the recommendation Mom promised from Sarah's psychology department for your daughter's college application. Sarah has not been a student there for 2 years. One by one, family members and friends began voicing their own realizations, recalling specific lies Patricia had told them about Sarah's education, our family's financial status, and other matters. The collective recognition of her deception was like watching a dam break, years of carefully maintained falsehoods washing away in minutes. Patricia's face had gone from red with anger to ashen. She looked wildly around the room, seeking an ally, and finding none. Even the relatives who had most admired her were now regarding her with shock and disappointment. You have no idea what it takes to maintain a family standing, she finally said, her voice shaking. People judge you by your achievements, by what your children accomplish. I was protecting us from their judgment. No, Mom, Sarah said gently. You were protecting yourself from your own insecurities. I never wanted to be a psychology major. That was your dream for me. I wanted to study art. But you said that was impractical. You pushed me into a path that made me so miserable I had panic attacks before every class. My father finally found his courage. Patricia, we have been living beyond our means for years because you refused to accept any lifestyle adjustment that might suggest we were not as successful as you wanted people to believe. I have emptied my retirement account and borrowed money we cannot repay to maintain your illusion. The final blow came from Aunt Helen, Patricia's oldest friend. Patricia, we would have supported you through financial difficulties, or if Sarah needed to take a different path. We love your family for who you are, not what you achieve or own. Did you really think so little of our friendship that you believed I would judge you for these normal life challenges? Patricia looked around the room, seeing not the admiration she had always sought, but pity and disappointment. The carefully constructed pedestal she had placed herself upon had crumbled completely. Without another word, she turned and walked into the house, leaving 50 guests and years of deception behind her. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of revelations. Then unexpectedly, Sarah began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle and grew into full, liberating laughter. "I am sorry," she gasped. "But do you realize this is the first honest moment our family has had in years? It feels amazing." Her laughter broke the tension, and soon others were joining in the absurdity of the situation, overtaking the shock. I put my arm around my sister's shoulders, feeling closer to her than I had in years. We were no longer the golden child and the failure roles assigned by Patricia to serve her narrative. We were just two siblings who had survived a dysfunctional upbringing and were finally free to define ourselves. My father approached us, his expression both remorseful and relieved. "I am so sorry, to both of you. I should have protected you from this years ago." "You can start now, Dad," I said, without anger, "by helping us build a family based on truth instead of appearances." As our guests began to disperse, many stopped to express support and share their own stories of family pressures and expectations. The facade had fallen, but in its place was something far more valuable: authentic connection. For the first time, I felt hopeful about our family's future, not despite the painful truth, but because of it. The immediate aftermath of the revelation was both chaotic and strangely peaceful. Most guests left within the hour, offering awkward but sincere support before departing. A few close family members stayed behind, helping to clean up the elaborate decorations that now seemed like props from a theater production that had finally closed. Patricia remained locked in her bedroom, refusing to speak to anyone. My father, after checking on her, briefly rejoined Sarah and me in the backyard. The three of us sat at one of the abandoned tables, surrounded by half-eaten cake and unfinished champagne. "She took 2 of her anxiety pills," Dad said, looking exhausted but somehow lighter. "She will probably sleep through the night." "Is she going to be okay?" Sarah asked, genuine concern in her voice despite everything. Eventually, Dad replied, "This has been coming for a long time. Maybe now she will agree to see someone professionally." I looked around at the remnants of the fake celebration. "I am sorry it had to happen like this in front of everyone, but I do not think she would have ever acknowledged the truth otherwise." "You did the right thing," Dad said, surprising me. "Both of you did. I was a coward for letting it go on so long." He reached out to take one of our hands in each of his. "I am so proud of who both of you have become, despite my failures as a father." "You were not a complete failure, Dad," Sarah said gently. "You helped me get my apartment when I left school. You sent me money. You just could not stand up to Mom." "Which was my job as your father and her husband," he acknowledged. "But that changes now. I have already called a financial advisor to help us sort out the mess we are in. We will probably need to sell the house, downsize significantly." "What about Uncle Robert's loan?" I asked. "I will pay him back, even if it takes years," Dad promised. No more deception, no more living beyond our means to keep up appearances. The next few days were difficult but necessary. Patricia eventually emerged from her room, hollow-eyed and subdued. She avoided direct conversation about what had happened, but she did not attempt to revive her fictions either. The carefully constructed narrative she had maintained for years had been publicly dismantled, and even she seemed to recognize there was no rebuilding it. I extended my stay in Boston by a week, working remotely, while helping my father organize their financial documents and create a realistic budget. The situation was worse than even I had realized, with credit card debt approaching $70,000 and the mortgage 3 months in arrears. Dad contacted a realtor about listing the house and began researching more affordable apartments in the area. Sarah visited daily, bringing coffee from the shop where she worked and gradually sharing more about her photography classes. One afternoon, she brought her portfolio, spreading the images across the dining room table. "These are extraordinary, Sarah," I said, genuinely impressed by her eye for composition and light. "Have you thought about pursuing this professionally?" "My instructor thinks I could. There is a more advanced program at the community college that offers a certificate. It is not a fancy university degree, but..." She trailed off, the old insecurities about status and achievement surfacing. "But it is something you love and have genuine talent for," I finished. "That is worth more than any degree you pursue, just to please someone else." Dad joined us, examining the photographs with newfound attention. "These are beautiful, sweetheart. I had no idea you were so talented." "You never asked," Sarah said softly, not accusingly, but stating a fact. "I am asking now," he replied. "Tell me about these photographs. Tell me what you love about taking them." And she did. For the first time in memory, our father listened to Sarah talk about her actual interests rather than the fictional achievements Patricia had attributed to her. The simple act of being seen for who she really was brought a glow to Sarah's face I had not witnessed in years. On my last day before returning to Chicago, Patricia finally addressed what had happened. She found me packing in the guest room and stood awkwardly in the doorway. "Your flight is this afternoon?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "Yes. At 4. I continued, folding my clothes, unsure where this conversation might go. "I suppose you think I am a terrible mother." There was no fire in the accusation, just weariness. I stopped packing and turned to face her. "I think you are a mother who got lost in your own expectations and insecurities. I think you forgot that your children are not extensions of yourself, but separate people with their own paths." She sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "I only wanted the best for both of you. I wanted you to be successful, respected. By whose definition, Mom, your society's what about what makes us happy and fulfilled?" She had no answer for that. After a long silence, she said, "Your father says we have to sell the house." "Yes. You cannot afford it. And you never really could. That is not a failure, Mom. It is just reality." "Reality." She repeated the word as if testing an unfamiliar concept. I have spent so long trying to shape reality to match what I thought it should be. She looked up at me, vulnerability replacing her usual mask of control. "I do not know how to live any other way, Elliot." "You learn. We all learn. Dad has found a therapist who specializes in anxiety and image management. He made an appointment for both of you next week." Surprisingly, she nodded. "Maybe that would help. I feel like I do not know who I am without the story I created." It was the most honest thing I had ever heard her say. I sat beside her on the bed, not touching, but closer than we had been in years. "That is a starting point, Mom. Finding out who you really are, rather than who you think you should be. That is all Sarah and I have been trying to do." "Your sister's photographs are quite good," she admitted reluctantly. "Not that I know anything about art." "They are, and my work in technology is challenging and rewarding, not just playing with computers." "I know. Your father showed me that article about your team's project. I did not understand most of it, but it seemed impressive." This small acknowledgement, years overdue, felt like a first tentative step toward a new relationship. 6 months later, much had changed in our family. My parents had sold the house and moved into a modest 2-bedroom condo. Dad had taken a second job to address their debt, and Mom had started working part-time at a local library, a job that suited her organizational skills without the pressure of sales targets. They were attending therapy both individually and as a couple, working through the issues that had led to the elaborate deceptions. Sarah had enrolled in the photography certificate program and was thriving. She had moved into a slightly better apartment with a small studio space and had even sold a few prints at a local cafe. She called me weekly, our sibling relationship healing, as we shared our authentic lives rather than the competitive narrative our mother had created. I flew back to Boston for Thanksgiving, our first holiday in the new condo. The contrast with previous family gatherings was striking. Instead of an elaborate status-conscious production, we had a simple meal prepared together. Patricia had initially fretted about the modest setting, but had eventually embraced the smaller-scale celebration. As we sat down to dinner, my father raised his glass. "I would like to propose a toast. To truth, to new beginnings, and to loving each other for who we really are, not who we think we should be." We all drank to that, even Patricia, who had a long way to go but had taken the first steps on a healthier path. After dinner, Sarah showed us her latest photography project, a series on authenticity and false facades that had been inspired by our family's journey. One image particularly struck me: our old house photographed through a shattered mirror, fragments reflecting different perspectives of the same structure. She had titled it, "Broken Image." "It is about how we can only see the truth clearly once we break through the distortions we create," she explained. Patricia studied the photograph for a long time. "It is powerful," she finally said. "You have a gift, Sarah. Not the one I imagined for you, but perhaps a more important one." That night, as I prepared to return to my hotel, Patricia caught me at the door. "I am not good at apologies, Elliot. I probably never will be. But I am trying to see you, both of you, for who you are rather than who I wanted you to be. It is not easy for me. I know, Mom. Change never is. But the fact that you are trying means everything. The path forward for our family would not be smooth or simple. Decades of dysfunction could not be resolved in 6 months or even 6 years. But the foundation had shifted from deception to truth, from appearance to reality. For the first time, we were building relationships based on who we actually were, not the roles we had been assigned in Patricia's carefully constructed fiction. As I drove away from their new home, I reflected on how exposure of the truth, though painful and public, had ultimately been the most loving act possible for our family. Sometimes healing can only begin once we stop protecting the wounds and allow them to breathe in the open air. Have you ever had to confront a painful truth in your own family? Leave a comment below, sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about healing from family dysfunction. Thank you for listening, and remember, living authentically may be difficult, but it is the only path to genuine connection and peace.